What would you do if your HOA tried to control every little thing about your home, down to the color of your porch lights? For years, my neighborhood was the kind of place where people smiled at each other during morning walks, kids rode their bikes freely, and weekends were spent grilling in backyards. It was peaceful, normal, until Karen showed up. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was the self-appointed ruler of the HOA, a woman who thrived on enforcing rules no one asked for and wielded her authority like a medieval queen. To her, property lines were merely suggestions, and her opinion was law. If you so much as left your trash bin out an extra 5 minutes past pickup time, expect a formal violation notice on your doorstep before sunrise. At first, I stayed out of her way. I wasn't the kind of guy who went looking for trouble. But I wasn't someone who backed down from it, either. That's why, when I installed a new LED security and holiday lighting system in my yard, I didn't think much of it. The system was designed to enhance safety, especially with the holiday season approaching. It wasn't obnoxiously bright or in violation of any HOA regulations. I had double-checked. But Karen? She hated it. The first time she came knocking, I was enjoying a quiet evening on my couch. The banging on my door was so aggressive I thought the house might cave in. When I opened it, Karen stood there, arms akimbo, her expression twisted in absolute outrage. "These lights are ruining the entire neighborhood." Her voice was sharp enough to cut through steel. I raised an eyebrow, arms crossed. "They're perfectly legal." Karen's jaw tightened, her lips pressing together in a thin line. "Just because it's legal doesn't mean I have to like it." I should have known then, this wasn't just about the lights. This was about control. And Karen was about to prove just how far she was willing to go to get it. I expected Karen to grumble, maybe send a few passive-aggressive emails, and eventually move on to terrorizing someone else in the neighborhood. I underestimated just how deep her obsession ran. The morning after our confrontation, I found an email in my inbox with the subject line, "Urgent HOA violation, immediate action required." I sighed before even opening it. "Mr. Carter. Your newly installed lighting system is in direct violation of HOA standards for neighborhood aesthetics and environmental impact. It has been brought to our attention that the brightness of these lights is disruptive to residents and may contribute to light pollution. You are hereby requested to remove them within 48 hours to maintain the integrity of our community. Failure to comply will result in escalating fines and further action from the HOA. It was signed, of course, by Karen. I ignored it. The lights were perfectly legal, and I wasn't about to let her push me around. But Karen wasn't the type to take no for an answer. The next day, she flooded my inbox with more messages, each one more aggressive than the last. "You're ruining the neighborhood's atmosphere." "People are complaining, this is unacceptable." "If you don't take them down, I will be forced to take stronger measures." But Karen didn't just send emails. She started a smear campaign. At first, it was subtle. Neighbors who used to wave at me in the mornings now looked away when I passed by. I overheard hushed whispers when I walked my dog, catching words like obnoxious and disruptive. One evening, Sarah came home from work looking furious. "Did you know Karen is telling people you installed those lights to spy on them?" I nearly dropped my coffee. "What?" "She's been saying your security cameras invade people's privacy. That you're watching the neighborhood like some kind of creep." That was when I realized Karen wasn't just trying to remove my lights, she was trying to turn the entire neighborhood against me. I was furious, but I refused to stoop to her level. I figured her lies would fall apart on their own. But then she made things personal. One afternoon, Sarah received an email from her company's HR department. She was being placed under internal review due to an anonymous complaint that she had been engaging in fraudulent activities at work. It was a complete fabrication. This is Karen. It has to be her. Sarah fumed, gripping her phone so tightly I thought it might snap. I had no proof yet, but I knew she was right. Karen was too much of a coward to confront me directly, so she was going after my family instead. Still, Karen wasn't satisfied. When she saw that her harassment wasn't forcing me to back down, she decided to weaponize the HOA. One morning, I stepped outside to find a petition taped to my front door. It was labeled, "Community Petition TO Remove Unsafe Lighting." It claimed that over 80% of the neighborhood wanted my lights taken down. I recognized several names on the list, including neighbors who had told me just days ago that they liked the decorations. I walked over to my next-door neighbor, Mr. Mitchell, an old-timer who had lived in the neighborhood for decades. "Hey, did you sign this?" He peered at the paper and scoffed. "Hell no. I love your lights. That woman must have put my name on there herself." That was it. Karen had forged names to make it look like the entire community was against me. I stormed over to her house and knocked on the door. When she opened it, she was wearing the same smug expression I'd seen 100 times before. "Oh, Ethan. What a surprise. Come to sign the petition?" I held it up. "Cut the crap, Karen. Did you forge these signatures?" She feigned offense, placing a hand over her chest. "I'm simply giving the neighborhood a voice. If you're so concerned, maybe you should listen to what people actually want." I wanted to yell, to call her out for the liar she was, but I knew it would only give her more ammunition. Karen thrived on drama. If I wanted to beat her, I had to be smart. I tore up the petition in front of her. Karen's smile faltered for the first time. I turned on my heel and walked away before she could spew another self-righteous speech. That should have been the end of it. But Karen wasn't done. Later that night, as I sat in my living room, my phone buzzed with a security alert. I opened the app, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. The footage showed Karen sneaking into my yard. She was dressed in dark clothing, carefully unscrewing my LED bulbs one by one. But she didn't stop there. She crouched down, opened my electrical panel, and ***cut the power, ***. She straightened up, dusted off her hands, and smirked. "Let's see what you do now, Carter." I stared at the screen, grinning. She had no idea she had just dug her own grave. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, replaying the footage over and over, watching Karen in her dark coat, crouching in my yard like a petty criminal. She thought she had won. She thought she had outsmarted me. I let her believe it, for now. The next morning, I walked outside to inspect the damage. Sure enough, every single LED bulb was gone. My security system's outdoor power line had been cut clean through. She had been thorough, precise, as if she had done this before. Sarah stood next to me, arms crossed, eyes still dark with anger from the attack on her job. "You're going to report her, right?" "Oh, I'm going to do a lot more than that." I forwarded the security footage straight to the HOA board and the police, attaching a formal complaint of trespassing and property damage. I made sure the entire neighborhood saw the video. Within hours, it had spread like wildfire through the community group chat. The reactions were exactly what I expected. She really broke into his yard? That's illegal, right? She's gone too far this time. Karen, however, had no idea about any of this. She was too busy basking in her so-called victory. That night, I noticed something strange. The street was darker than usual. The few houses with holiday lights seemed dim, almost flickering. I stepped onto my porch, looking toward Karen's house. Then it hit me. Karen had forgotten something crucial. The outdoor electrical systems in our neighborhood were interconnected. My house sat right next to hers, which meant I didn't even have time to process the thought before it happened. At 2 a.m., a small crackling sound echoed through the night. Then, a flicker of orange light. Karen's kitchen window lit up in flames. I ran to the window, my stomach dropping as I saw the fire quickly spreading along the cabinets. My phone was already in my hand, dialing 911 before my brain could catch up. But Karen? She was asleep. Completely unaware that her own arrogance had just turned against her. I stood at my window, helpless as the flames grew, licking up the walls. Then, a loud explosion. A glass jar shattered, and a wave of flames surged upward. Karen's scream ripped through the neighborhood. Seconds later, her front door flew open, and she stumbled outside in her nightgown, hair a tangled mess, her face twisted in absolute terror. Fire! Help! Someone help me! Her screams shattered the silence. House lights flickered on. Doors opened. The whole neighborhood rushed outside to witness the spectacle. Karen tried to run back into her house, a fire extinguisher clutched in her trembling hands. But she was too panicked, her fingers fumbled uselessly at the safety pin. By the time the fire department arrived, the damage was irreversible. Her kitchen was gone, reduced to nothing but smoldering black ash. The moment the flames were out, Karen turned to me. "You," she screamed, voice raw. "This is your fault." I laughed, actually laughed. Oh. I wasn't the one sneaking around with wire cutters, was I? Karen froze. The realization dawned in her eyes. Then the murmurs began. The neighbors had seen the security footage. They knew exactly how this fire started. And worst of all, it wasn't just her house that suffered. I turned my head toward Mr. Jacobson's place, the elderly man who lived alone next door to Karen. His home was still standing, but thick black smoke curled from his open windows. Karen had been so obsessed with her vendetta that she never considered the consequences of her actions. The crowd turned on her in an instant. She could have killed him. This is her fault. She did this to herself. Karen's lips parted, but for the first time, she had nothing to say. And the worst was still yet to come. The fire was out, but the damage was permanent. Karen stood outside her house, her nightgown soaked in sweat, her face streaked with soot and disbelief. The once pristine kitchen she had boasted about in countless HOA meetings was now charred beyond recognition. The air smelled of burnt wood, melted plastic, and the acrid sting of her own arrogance. The neighbors who had gathered weren't rushing to comfort her. They weren't offering words of sympathy. Instead, they whispered among themselves, shaking their heads, their eyes filled with something Karen wasn't used to seeing: satisfaction. Mr. Jacobson, the elderly neighbor whose house had also been damaged by the smoke, stood in his doorway, still coughing from the lingering fumes. His daughter had arrived in a panic, wrapping him in a blanket, glaring daggers at Karen. "You almost killed my father," she spat. Karen turned sharply, face contorted in something between defensiveness and desperation. "It wasn't my fault," she cried, the same way a child does when they've been caught red-handed. But the words rang hollow. No one believed her. And then, just when Karen thought things couldn't possibly get worse, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and a well-dressed woman stepped out, clipboard in hand, expression cold and unreadable. An insurance investigator. The hush that fell over the neighborhood was palpable. Everyone knew what was coming. "Mrs. Thompson," the woman said coolly, flipping through some paperwork. "We've reviewed your insurance claim regarding the fire damage to your home." Karen's entire body sagged in relief. Finally, someone who could help her. "Yes. Thank you." I need to process my claim immediately. This was a terrible accident. But the woman didn't nod. She didn't pull out any forms for Karen to sign. Instead, she held up a different document. During our investigation, we discovered some irregularities. Karen blinked. What do you mean? The investigator tilted her clipboard toward the crowd, as if making sure the entire neighborhood could hear. For one, it appears that your home's fire alarm system was intentionally disabled at the time of the incident. Furthermore, your claim states that your kitchen appliances were new and in proper working order. However, our records show that you attempted to claim reimbursement for the same appliances last year. The whispers turned into full-blown murmurs. Fraud. Karen visibly paled. No, you don't understand, she stammered. There must be some mistake. I was just... The investigator didn't flinch. Additionally, security footage provided by a resident shows that you deliberately tampered with electrical systems in the neighborhood, which contributed directly to this fire. It was over. A few neighbors outright laughed. Mr. Mitchell, the old-timer from next door, let out a sharp whistle. Damn, Karen. You really dug your own grave this time. Karen's mouth opened and closed, her eyes darting around like a trapped animal looking for an escape. I didn't mean. Fraud is a serious offense, Mrs. Thompson, the investigator interrupted smoothly, tucking the clipboard under her arm. Unfortunately, due to the deliberate nature of this incident, your insurance claim is denied. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Denied? Karen's voice broke. Denied, the investigator repeated. And given the evidence, I would strongly advise seeking legal counsel. Karen swayed on her feet, as if the words physically knocked the air from her lungs. She had nothing left, no kitchen, no support, and now, no way to pay for any of it. And yet, even that wasn't the final blow. Because just as the investigator was turning to leave, another car pulled up. This one had flashing red and blue lights. The police officer who stepped out wasn't here for a casual chat. The crowd fell silent as he approached Karen, his expression unreadable but firm. Mrs. Thompson, he said, pulling out a notepad, we need to have a word regarding the evidence of trespassing and deliberate property damage submitted against you. Karen's face completely drained of color. The neighbors didn't look shocked. They didn't even seem surprised. They just looked satisfied. And for the first time, Karen was truly, undeniably powerless. The moment Karen realized she was finished was almost poetic. The police officer's voice barely registered as he read her the charges: trespassing, vandalism, attempted insurance fraud, but the weight of his words pressed down on her like an avalanche. The neighborhood that once tiptoed around her now stood in silent, unforgiving judgment. No one rushed to her defense. No one cared to argue on her behalf. They had spent years enduring her petty rules, bogus fines, and power-hungry antics. Now, they were watching her face the consequences she had always thought she was above. The officer pulled out a pair of handcuffs, and that's when panic finally set in. "You can't do this," she shrieked, her voice raw, a desperate edge cutting through the night. "I am the HOA." A chuckle rippled through the crowd. Mr. Mitchell, ever the realist, shook his head. "No, Karen. You were the HOA." The sharp metallic click of the handcuffs snapping around her wrists felt like the final punctuation mark on her reign of terror. The officer guided her toward the police car, and as she stumbled, she looked around, wild-eyed, searching for someone, anyone, to stand up for her. No one did. Then, just to make things even worse, someone from the crowd hit play on a Bluetooth speaker. The song? Bad Boys, the Cops' theme. The neighborhood erupted into laughter. A few people even clapped, as if celebrating the end of an era. The woman who had spent years making everyone's lives miserable was now the neighborhood's biggest joke. And me? I stood there, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. It would have been enough to see her gone, but I decided to leave one final mark on the neighborhood she tried to control. A week later, I reinstalled my LED lights, twice as bright. But it wasn't just me. The whole neighborhood joined in. Houses up and down the street put up bright, colorful lights, turning the once dull, regulation-heavy area into a shining display of unity and defiance. The best part? Someone draped a giant white banner across Karen's now empty house. In big, bold letters, it read, "Here lies Karen's tyranny, may it rest in darkness." I took a sip of my tea, enjoying the peaceful glow of my yard, free from Karen's nonsense at last. And as I stood there, basking in the warmth of my victory, I had to wonder, how many other neighborhoods are still living under the rule of a Karen? Have you ever felt powerless against HOA, or Karen, rules? Share your experiences below, let's see who had it worse.